Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
Hi, I'm Faye, and I'm on my own today for the newsread and the episode. So let's go straight ahead with the news. First of all, Houghton Bio has appointed Brittany Hook as Chief Commercial Officer to accelerate net negative biofuel deployment and secure their foothold in a $200 billion biofuel market. I had the pleasure of meeting Brittany in her first week at Houghton Bio in 2024, and I'm absolutely delighted for her and very excited for the continued impact that she will have on and with Houghton Bio. Listeners will remember a previous episode with Paul Beastle, and since that episode was published, Houghton Bio has really continued to scale, and this appointment marks a major step as they gear up for Series A and prepare to deploy the first-of-a-kind HBX energy platform in 2026. So if you're a clean tech or an investor in this space listening in, then do take a look at them because they're going places. Next, we have Arm, who have announced a multi-year joint initiative with Meta to enable richer, more accessible AI experiences for billions of people worldwide. The partnership aligns Arm's leadership in power-efficient compute with Meta's innovation in infrastructure, AI products and open technologies, spanning AI technologies and data center infrastructure. Arm CEO Rene Haas believes the alliance is a tech game changer. He said, AI's next era will be defined by delivering efficiency at scale. Partnering with Meta, we're uniting Arm's performance per watt leadership with Meta's AI innovation to bring smarter, more efficient, intelligent everywhere, from milliwatts to megawatts. Next, we have Cambridge tech company Cognidocs, who launched ambitious expansion plans after being snapped up for an undisclosed amount by US business Recur Software. The strategy includes hiring fresh talent in Cambridge. Cognidocs provides electronic quality management system software used by life sciences, medical device and high-tech product development companies. It helps those companies manage design documentation, quality processes and regulatory compliance for ISO, FDA and many other standards. CEO Joe Byrne said, "We're delighted to be joining forces with Recur. They have a deep understanding of how to grow industry-specific software products without losing what makes them special." He continued, "While we're not disclosing the transaction value, we are happy with the outcome. We're headquartered at Barclays Eagle Labs and we plan to stay put. We're 18 people in total with 11 Cambridge based and the rest across the UK, Malta, Romania, Portugal and Belarus. Post-deal, we're stepping on the gas. We're adding roles in Cambridge in product engineering, AI, machine learning and customer success, and we'll scale go-to-market using Recur's US footprint. So congratulations to Joe and the team and to Recur." Cambridge Future Tech and Arup have signed an MOU to co-develop the Deep Rack Venture Studio, an initiative designed to tackle the major barriers to digital infrastructure growth. The studio will aim to create 16 new startups focused on solving system-level bottlenecks in data center performance, resilience, efficiency and sustainability, with particular focus on cooling, energy density and circularity. The studio is targeting a 2026 start date and is inviting additional strategic partnerships to join the collaboration, providing early access to the technologies shaping the next generation of compute. And we'll be talking to Owen Thompson again soon on the podcast, so watch out for that episode. And the final piece of news is more of a cautionary tale and a bit of an advisory. Cambridge technology guru Steve Young was in the press this week, having issued a heartfelt warning to AI giants not to overplay their hand and risk repeating the disastrous .com crash. Young is highly regarded in the tech world, having sold companies to Google, Microsoft and Apple. He said, There is no doubt in my mind that we are into bubble territory. Many investors are now piling into AI without really understanding what they're investing in. Many AI company valuations are bonkers, and many AI companies will go bust within a year as the client companies they serve fail to realise the promised gains. Tech stock valuations will drop substantially, sending a shockwave across markets, resulting in a major correction, just as happened 25 years ago. So cautionary words indeed there from Steve. It's a really timely and interesting read, so do head over to Business Weekly to read the full article. So now to today's episode. We have been given permission with thanks by the Cambridge Tech Week team to share regular content with the Cambridge Tech podcast audience of sessions that ran throughout the event. So over the coming weeks and months, we're going to slot in some slightly different sessions and content where we can showcase an even broader view of the tech landscape. So today we're kicking off with what's actually one of my favourite sessions from the Startup to Scale Up Day, where Amelia Armour of Amadeus Capital Partners interviewed Kristian Segerstrale from Super Evil Mega Corp, who is currently navigating the Cambridge ecosystem on a quest to understand how to better enable the scale-up potential of the city. So let's hear what he has to say, and believe me, there are some great tips in there and some really excellent sound bites to listen out for.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Lovely to see everyone this morning. It's my privilege today to speak to Kristian, who, in terms of the theme of today, fits in extremely well. He started and scaled up multiple companies, sold them through M&A and through IPO, been an early investor in Supercell, so huge amounts of experience. And the exciting thing is that he's back in Cambridge, having done an undergraduate degree, now back after decades away in the US. And so lots to talk about, but to focus on the theme for today, this startup and scale up. Maybe you could take us through a bit of your journey and the first company you were involved in, and what was the scale-up process there?
Sure, yeah. Well, firstly, thanks for having me. Super fun to be back, actually, and really inspirational talks earlier today. And it's been super fun to just meet lots of investors, startups in the Cambridge ecosystem. So it's been really fun. So I've been really fortunate to be part of really four, I suppose, really quite explosive growth stories in computer games. So I set up my very first game company in London, actually, in the year 2001, that was called Blue Mobile. We made a big bet, which felt at the time like a huge bet. I mean, I was 1 year out of university. So I just joined I had done a product management job at a tech startup, enough to think that I know everything. So as a result, but I was very convinced that downloadable things onto mobile phones were going to be a thing. That felt very, very, very real. And I had grown up programming computer games for very constrained devices in the mid-80s. So it felt like, hey, here are these black and white devices that look kind of like the computers I grew up with. Could we make games work on those things? And that company grew kind of despite itself, really. We really had no idea what we were doing. 4 co-founders, super passionate about building games and building a company, tried to not repeat the mistakes of the startup that we had been involved in previously. And we grew, and then before we knew it, we were a multinational company. We ultimately IPO'd on the NASDAQ in 2007 with like a 450 million or so market cap, which is amazing, except that I hated being a public company. And we I actually left a quarter into being public. And, when we made the press release that I'm leaving, the stock price jumped by 5%. So there's something quite special about realizing that you're like worth a negative $30 million to your company right now.
That's unusual.
But that said, I did leave very much with a chip on my shoulder, because I felt like the going public process had forced us down a path which I actually didn't believe in from a product point of view. I'm very much a product person. I think about like, how do people consume something in 5 years and how do you now build it, right? So and I really wanted to pivot the company at the time to be more of a direct to consumer game company using this new thing called internet gaming at that time. And so I pretty much left in order to straight away found my second company called Playfish, which is focused on what if the Nintendo Wii, do you remember the Nintendo Wii? The tennis kind of game? Yeah. What if Nintendo Wii had like a love child with an early stage innocent Facebook? If you remember what that was like still. I know it's difficult today, but that thing where you just kind of share things online. And so we set up a company called Playfish, which really caught the most enormous tailwind you can imagine. So from founding the company to launching our first product, because we were this relentless focus on speed. So we got our first product out about 3 months into being a company. That product got more than 100,000 players in like a couple of weeks, which then became 1 million players in the next following weeks, which became 10 million players 6 months from there. And we just captured lightning in a bottle. I wish I could just somehow repeat it as a formula. But 23 months later, we had 40 million monthly actives, nearly 100 million in revenue, and we were sold to Electronic Arts for just over $400 million at the time, right? So 23 months from founding the company, right? Which is just an insane thing. And at that point in time, because I moved to California, so I was in California for a while, set up an investment company called Initial Capital, where our very first investment was a company called Supercell, which ultimately, Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, if you play any of those games, which ultimately ended up selling to Tencent for $10 billion. And there, I did this much work. All honor to investors who do this much work, but I did this much work. I think I added value to, I want to say 3 or 4, really genuine value to 3 or 4 crucial meetings in the first couple of years of the company, possibly. But it's really their success story, and it's a really good example of how sometimes you need to work this much to generate return of this much. So really my best advice to anyone is find those opportunities, because they're by far the best ones, right? But then I also, for my sins, founded actually a COVID testing company, out of all things that I know nothing about, during COVID, because the US response to COVID was so abysmal, right? Literally, there was like no public health response really. So we figured with a couple of friends, okay, how do we fix this? You know, how do we get up and fix this? And source some tests from China, and then set up a testing company that figured out the logistics of how does one get tests, how do one test people, how do you send the results over. That became like the largest COVID testing company in schools in California in about 6 months or something stupid like this. It was like one of those explosive businesses. So long story short, and I'm now the chair of Super Evil Mega Corp, which is a multiplayer cross-platform game company, which is a lot of fun. But I'm more importantly doing a sabbatical right now to try to work out what is happening in the Cambridge ecosystem and how do we scale incredible winners out of the amazing work that's being done by all the startups here.
No, it's brilliant. And we're delighted to have you back in Cambridge and bringing that talent here to help our company scale up.
I'll bring the talent eventually, but now it's just me.
It's good. Just to go back to your very first company, you started in London and you ended up moving to the US.
Yes.
What was the driver behind that?
Lack of capital.
Okay.
Really just straightforward lack of capital.
Okay.
It was nuclear winter, as I think they used to call it in the funding scene in London at that point in time. We were super young. Nobody just would like, I remember when we crossed, I think we had, I want to say at the time, like 4 or 5 million pounds in revenue. We were profitable, and we would go to the venture capitalists in London, obviously not knowing anything. We were like in our early 20s. We had no idea. We just didn't know anything. So I don't hold it against them. But they were kind of valuing us at between 2 and 3 million pounds. And we were like, this doesn't make any sense. Our competitors just raised 10 million at 100 million valuation in the US, and they're smaller than we are. How does this even work? So we ultimately ended up going to the US in order to make that happen, like in order to actually make a big fundraise from there happen. We ultimately had to have an HQ in the US, and we had to have some folks from the investors actually join the company and whatnot. So like it wasn't a super straightforward process at the time, but it was really fun. It was very much an incredible learning experience, and also enabled us to grow the next company much faster.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you think if you were setting up today, you would still need to move to the US?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, capital is available everywhere. Knowledge, most importantly, is available everywhere. There is talent everywhere. It's all literally, you know how the Silicon Valley used to be a place? Silicon Valley is now a mindset. It literally is a mindset. And you will find, in particular in places like London, Cambridge, Berlin, Helsinki, any of these places, you will find the talent to do it. You just need to make sure that you focus on finding the right people who have that mindset of slight, crazy, massive impatience. Let's go and build.
Right. And in terms of momentum, which we were sort of talking about a little bit before this panel, like, how do you compare momentum in the US and in Silicon Valley startups to what you're seeing in Cambridge and the UK at the moment?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I will say this with great humility. I've only been here for a little bit, and I've met with some companies. I have some sense, but I'm in no way an authority on the Cambridge or even UK ecosystem. But one of the things that really struck me when moving to the US was, and multiple people told me this, they said, like, look, in Silicon Valley, time is much more valuable than capital. Momentum is everything. Momentum is your currency in capitalism. You are either fast and you grow, or you are no one. Everyone celebrates either a quick victory and a quick bloody success, or they'll celebrate a quick blowout when like it didn't work out. That either one was fine. The thing that everyone's super scared of, and again, I'm not saying this is the greatest thing ever, but I'm just stating this as a fact. People are most scared of is zombie companies that, you know, you end up kind of starting, and it kind of is okay, but it's kind of not really going anywhere. But it really, I think one of my big lessons was just how much momentum matters. And it's really interesting because there is a dichotomy in your brain, right? As a founder, as a maker of something, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, a new type of game or a sensor technology, right? Where on the one hand, there are some processes in what you're making where you must be patient. You must not rush it because it's very, very important to get it right. It's more important to get it right than to get it quick, right? But equally, in the company building process, in the recruitment process, the scaling out process, the financing process, momentum and speed is everything. So you've got to find a way for your brain to work on two different frequencies or two different sort of clock speeds for you to win. And I think that marrying those two perspectives and how to find a team that can find the right compromises. And frankly, they end up being shouting matches half the time with the CTO saying we must have more time and the CEO going, you do not have time, we're going tomorrow, right? That in itself raises the pressure and the energy in the startup in such a way. And, you know, we were talking about it earlier. You do see literally unicorns being built on top of sand with zero IP, zero nothing out of the Silicon Valley off the back of pure momentum. And the thing is some of the time they do blow up. It happens. But other times they actually do end up catching like a critical mass, enough capital, enough talent, enough momentum to be able to turn that into whatever reality they want over time. And we must not scoff at that here. Just because we build our startups on super strong tech and things which is supposedly defensible that is defensible and that we spent 5 or 10 years on, which is amazing, we must not think that means that we can get away without momentum and get away without pushing as hard as we can, raising more than we think we need, scaling as quickly as we can. So that mix of patience and impatience, I think, is really a really interesting topic area.
I think it's a really interesting point because I see in some of the real scale-up companies in our portfolio that in terms of the senior management, they're starting to import them all from the US or hire people at the US because they can't get that drive and experience together in people that are necessary in the UK. Do you think we have a cultural problem in the UK, or that we just haven't scaled enough companies to have people peeling out? Do you think we have the talent here, or do you think it does need to all come from the US for the moment or elsewhere?
So it's a really good question. Firstly, I don't know yet. I don't feel like I have a really good feel for it. The one thing I will say is that one of the proudest things that I can say about, say, my journey at Playfish, growing that company, even though we ultimately sold it to the US, to Electronic Arts, the alumni from that company in the UK, there's more than 12 funded companies, out of which now 6 or 7 are exited, large-scale gaming companies. And I do think that culture doesn't only very, very partially comes from where you grew up. Culture comes from what is your work experience? Where did you work? My best career advice for folks wanting to start up is join a really good startup. Join a startup that's really fast, because that way you understand the mindset of what it takes. And it does, sometimes it's true, you've got to work really hard, but it's not just about working hard. It's about kind of daring to set the bar higher. It's about daring to say, why not? You know what? Life is hard. Running a startup is hard. Why not push it as far as it could possibly go? Because it's going to be hard anyway. At least this way it's going to be exciting and hard, you know, at the same time. So I think so much of it has, I don't think, anything to do with nationality. It's got to do with what was your work experience. And there's nothing more valuable than having been part of a scale up and having seen what's worked and what hasn't. So looping like super long way back to your question, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with any ecosystem. I do think that the more we can cycle talent through existing successful scale-ups back into new startups and new scale-ups, the faster that happens, the more we will get more aggressively growing startups. And to be honest, like having been away for some time and coming back, the UK has come leaps and bounds. I mean, let's look just even the investment check sizes. We constantly complain that, hey, we don't have enough late-stage funding. It's true, but at least we have late-stage funding. We didn't used to have any of it at all, right? So all of this is, I do think it's improving, and more than anything, we should just dare to set the bar higher. We shouldn't settle. We shouldn't think it's okay. It's okay to have great tech and not scale. No, it's not okay. Let's go scale.
And if you were to give advice to some of the scale-up companies in this audience, what would you say from your experience of working, you know, in companies that have got to successful exits? What should they really focus on during that scale-up journey?
Yeah, there's like obviously there's a two-hour talk in there somewhere. But I guess, you know, I really enjoyed Rebecca's and Mark's panel earlier. I don't know if you saw that, but they both made the point around focus. There's nothing more important, in particular as a CEO or as a driver of a thing, to understand what is your win condition. Like, what is it that is going to make you win this game? And then do that and nothing else. One of the best things about Supercell that, you know, they grew from nothing to about 2 billion in revenue, something like high single-digit millions of profit per employee, which is like insane, right? Mm-hmm. But they grew there largely by saying no, right? You know, they were laser focused on the products that were successful, and really, really good at keeping the whole company laser focused on the things that were successful and not going after the shiny. I've made this mistake many, many times. Even in Playfish, that was in a seemingly a rocket ship. We ended up devoting talent to things because we thought we walked on water, we can do anything. So instead of sticking to the category of game that we were really good at, we tried out some really random other stuff that looked like could be successful because, you know, somebody else had succeeded in that area. Don't do it. Focus, single most important thing. The second most important thing is that well, it's probably, these are all important. Talent. We also heard that in the previous panel. But really, don't settle for the top 10% in your area. Get the top 0.1% in that area. There's no excuse. If you have a company and you have a tech that's truly, truly really good, there's nothing that has more leverage in your outcome as a CEO or founder than what talent you manage to bring on board. It's much more valuable to find the 2 best people in the world doing your thing than raising $100 million for your company. Because the talent will unlock everything for you. Money is a commodity. You can ultimately get it. It's a commodity, right? Except from very highly value-added investors. But ultimately, once you have momentum, you can get money from anywhere. Mm-hmm. Talent is very hard. And figuring out how to find it, how to attract it, how to go out and get it is the single most important thing. Can you have multiple single most important things? I'm depositing that it's a typical scale-up challenge. Everything is super important. So I'm telling you, this is all priority number 1. So
yeah,
you figured out there. Yeah, but so yeah, we talked about focus, we talked about talent. And then just finally, mindset, more than anything else, that focus on momentum, getting the whole team constantly rallied around momentum, constantly rallied around how do you, on the one hand, not break the R&D processes that must go slow, but how do you take whatever R&D has already completed, whatever milestone you have completed, how do you relentlessly maximize the impact of that, like with the rest of the company, while buying R&D time to get to the next milestone or whatever the next thing is, and not be scared of anything, not settle and celebrate that, yay, we're 5 years ahead of anyone else. You know what? No one is 5 years ahead of anyone else.
No, that's brilliant. And I think your first company, you really got in this new wave of technology of mobile gaming starting. When you've now come back to Cambridge after decades away, what are you seeing as exciting in Cambridge?
So I'm still at that honeymoon stage of everything is exciting. I'm sort of tech nerd, so I go look at a robot, you robot. Somebody comes to me with an image sensor. I'm like, ooh, an image sensor. It can do stuff. So. But it's kind of good. Whereas I look at a game these days and will never work, because I've been doing it for too long, right? But yeah, so I do find lots of things exciting. I think the core components of what I feel are really exciting right now are there is genuinely some frontier tech where the mix of sort of, I guess, the mix of the real world and the digital world are coming together, in particular with AI as an accelerant, that whether it is in battery technology, in imaging sensors, in robotics, any of these, it feels like the pace of change can be very fast. And whereas 10 years ago, it felt like anything that scales quickly has its fundamental home on the internet, because Web 2.0 was the thing that connected the whole world, for better or worse, in different ways. But that was how the really, really big companies were being built. It feels like the next 5 to 10 years belongs to the physical world. It belongs to atoms more than bits, or the mix of atoms and bits. And Cambridge is an incredible place for that, right? So it feels like we have so much of the kind of ingredients of where the really big successes come from in the next couple of decades. It's really down to us of how we mix them together and how do we scale them out. And that to me is fundamentally very exciting.
I think that's brilliant, and I think that goes to the core of the IP that is being generated in the university here. You are quite unique to have in this environment, and so it's great that you're here, and it's great that you've come back to Cambridge and really helping to grow the pool of talent that we have of experienced operators, because that's a lot of what our companies are lacking. They have great IP, but they need help scaling up. So
the interesting thing about it is that there is no books. The only way to learn it is by doing it and making some absolutely howling mistakes in the process. And so, yeah, my hope would be that as many people here don't make the same mistakes that I've made and make interesting new mistakes instead. But genuinely, I mean, all the incredible things that are being built out of here, and I really, really hope to one day, play a part in some of them.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kristian.
Cheers, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For having me.
Today's show was produced by Carl Homer of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner, Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It'll really help others discover the show.
If you are a startup looking to grow in Cambridge, the Bradfield Centre offers a range of flexible membership packages which put you in control of your office and home working mix. There's a vibrant, collaborative atmosphere, on-site cafe, plenty of green outside space, and regular member social events. For more information, visit bradfieldcentre.com or call 01223 919 600.